was the original honky-tonk girl.
Thank you.
She was born a coal miner's daughter, but she has become a country music legend, Miss Loretta Lynn.
She was the first one that came out with the songs that, you know, pretty much told a man which way to stand.
She really changed what women could sing about.
You set this chicken your last time, 'cause now I've got the pill.
She was just mad as she could be, and I thought, I've got to play her.
Loretta Lynn, now on Biography.
Without further ado, I'd like to introduce a woman that I think is the greatest female singer-songwriter of the 20th century, Miss Loretta Lynn.
April 2004, Nashville, Tennessee. And the world of country music is celebrating a new album by an all-time legend, Loretta Lynn.
I lie here all alone in my bed of memories. I'm dreaming of your sweet kiss.
I was sitting there listening to it thinking, I haven't heard music like this in years, and I didn't even realize it.
Well, I love her. She's one of our true treasures.
Ever since you left me, I've done nothing but wrong.
From her very first hit record more than 40 years ago to today, few singers have connected with their fans more than Loretta Lynn. Because they know that each and every one of her songs contains a piece of her life and theirs.
All my fans share their life with me. I share mine with them. And we talk about our lives to each other. And that's where a lot of my songs come from.
She brings you in and speaks to you as if she's known you all her life and all your life. And it's an amazing gift.
Loretta Lynn's been inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. She was the first woman to be named Entertainer of the Year. She's had an amazing 16 #1 hits.
You set this chicken your last time, 'cause now I've got the pill.
She is a fearless songwriter whose controversial lyrics broke down barriers and spoke to women everywhere.
Loretta was the first hillbilly feminist. Look at her songs, The Pill, Don't Come Home A-Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind, Fifth City, You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man.
But as famous as she is, there's a part of Loretta Lynn that will never leave the remote hills of eastern Kentucky and the gritty life she lived in Butcher Hollow. She was born Loretta Webb on April 14, 1935, in a one-room tar paper cabin, miles from the nearest town. Her mother named her after a movie star, whose picture was pasted on the wall to keep the wind from whistling through the cracks.
She had Betty Davis and Claudette Colbert and Loretta Young papered up. And it was the day before I was born. And she said, I laid down across the bed and I looked up at them three girls and I thought, if this baby is a little girl, I'm going to name her after one of these women. And she said, there's nobody as pretty as Loretta Young, so I'll name her after her.
Music was a part of Loretta's life from the day she was born.
Dad played the fiddle a little bit. Grandpa, he played the banjo. Mom sang. Matter of fact, she had a twin sister. When they were younger, they traveled around in different churches and they did a duet. And so I think we got our singing from Mom, actually.
They'd play in the evening, sang the songs that they wrote. Of course, us kids would be playing around and dancing around while they were singing and telling their big stories, you know.
Loretta, she always sang. Mom taught her to sing very young, too. I'm sure that she rocked me and Peggy and all of us kids to sleep singing. Yeah, you could hear for a mile around.
She'd get out on the front porch in the swing and all the neighbors could hear.
Loretta was born in the middle of the Depression and was 6 by the time the Second World War began. She grew up in a large family, the second of 8 brothers and sisters. Their mother, Clara Webb, supported the family by taking in laundry and washing it by hand.
She had big blue eyes and dark complexion and had long black straight hair. And she was Indian all the way. She made her own medicine. If we got sick, she knew how to take care of us.
During the Depression, Loretta's father, Melvin, built roads for Franklin Roosevelt's Works Progress Administration. After the war, he supported the family by working the coal mines. He worked on his hands and knees in a coal track that was 3 feet high. He'd come home late at night with bloodied knees and a soot-covered face. Like many coal miners, he suffered from black lung, a condition where the lungs become choked with coal dust. Loretta had a short childhood. She met her husband-to-be at a pie social at the local schoolhouse. She was only 11 years old.
He come in from the Army, and he was ready to go over to Germany, I guess. The holler split off, and he lived up in one holler, and I lived up in another one. And I watched him walk all the way up the hill. I thought he looked like a little toy soldier. That night I went in the house humming, and Mommy said, "Loretta, who brought you home tonight?" And I said, "Doolittle Lynn." And Mommy said, "Don't you ever let me hear of that ever happening again. He's too old and he's too wild for you." But it happened.
Despite her parents' objections, Loretta married Doolittle Lynn when she was just 13. But right from their wedding night, their marriage was troubled.
He threw all my meals out. Everything I'd cook, he'd throw out. No matter how good they were, he'd just throw them out. But he had another girlfriend. He wasn't fooling me.
When Loretta was 3 months pregnant with her first child, Doolittle left her for another woman. Loretta returned to her parents' home in Butcher Hollow.
We stayed separated till I was almost 7 months pregnant. Every night I'd cry myself to sleep, and every day I'd find every four-leaf clover I could. And Mommy'd always say, if you put four-leaf clovers in the Bible where it says, "And this shall come to pass," if you open up the Bible and it says that, and you put your four-leaf clover in there, it'll come to pass. So the Bible was stuck full of four-leaf clovers.
2 months before the baby was to be born, Doolittle begged Loretta to come back. He was determined not to follow in their father's footsteps down into the coal mines, so he hitchhiked to Washington State, where he found a job on a farm. When Doo sent for Loretta, she sadly packed her things, preparing to leave Butcher Hollow for the first time in her life.
I can remember I was about 3 or 4 years old. I was at the foot of the bed, and Daddy was going to have to take Loretta out to meet the train. There I sat, and she was packing her things, and for a while I thought she was going to pack mine and take me with her.
Loretta arrived at the farm in Washington, only to find Doolittle running a moonshine operation on the side. He was so successful at it that he was given the nickname Mooney. While he peddled home-brewed whiskey, Loretta cooked and cleaned for the farmhands.
I worked and cleaned house for people, and I picked strawberries, and I worked for the Green Brothers so that we got to live there for nothing. There was 36 ranch hands that they had, so their aunt lived with them, and I'd help her cook.
In 1949, Loretta gave birth to her first child. She was still a child herself, only 14 years old.
I'd bathe her and I'd change her clothes. It was like me playing with a little doll. The second one come along and this got a little rougher. And then the next one, and the next one, I knew then it wasn't no game.
In fact, by the time Loretta was 18, she had 4 children. She and Doolittle constantly struggled to support their new family. And he didn't make it any easier by drinking, carousing with women, and even hitting Loretta.
He never hit me one time that I didn't hit him back twice.
Loretta's memories, both good and bad, would become the inspiration for her songs. But at age 18, she had no thought about becoming a singer. Until one day, when Doo came home with a birthday present that would change her life and country music forever. As an 18-year-old mother of 4, a career in country music was the furthest thing from Loretta Lynn's mind. But her husband, Doo, saw something special in her.
When I started singing, Doo had never really heard me sing a song all the way through. He just told me he thought I could sing as good as anybody that's out there making money.
When I'd come home, she'd say, "Honey, listen to this song I wrote today." And she'd sing me this song that she'd wrote, you know. Didn't have no guitar or anything. So I thought it sounded real good to me, and so I was going into town, Bellingham, Washington, and I was looking in the pawn shop, and I seen this guitar in there, and I went and bought the guitar and brought it to her.
But it wasn't until Loretta was in her mid-20s that Dew pushed her to take the next step.
He said, I'm going to have you sing. We'll make enough money to buy us a new home, and then you can quit. You know, it don't work that way.
Loretta struggled to teach herself how to play the guitar better by following a mail-order correspondence course. After only 2 months, Dew arranged an audition with a local group. They were so impressed by her raw talent and taken by her youth and shyness that they offered her a job performing with them at the Grange Hall in Linden, Washington.
Well, they had a show every Saturday night, and they gave her $5 a night to sing with them. So she was starting out pretty good. I mean, getting a little money, that was pretty big to her at that time, I'm sure.
Word spread quickly about the new local singer. Soon the Grange Hall was so packed that it couldn't contain all her fans. Doolittle decided that it was time to take the act on the road.
Handmade me a handmade sign to put out in front. It said Loretta Lynn and the Trailblazers, we named the band. We put it out on the road. Pretty soon we was working there 6 days a week.
Loretta's reputation reached across the Canadian border, where a wealthy lumberman named Norm Burley saw her on a TV show. He came to see her play in person, and her performance of Whispering Sea touched him so deeply that he vowed to share Loretta's extraordinary talent with the world.
He lost his wife, and he'd go out at night and sit by the sea on a big rock, and he said he'd always talk to his wife, and that reminded him of his wife, and he wanted me to record that.
He said that he wanted to start a label, and he wanted to know if I'd be interested in it, and I told him sure. He gave me some money and a couple of credit cards and told me to go to California and make a record.
In 1960, Loretta and Doolittle packed a few changes of clothes and headed for California. When they got to Los Angeles, they began knocking on studio doors. Most wouldn't give the young couple from Kentucky the time of day.
I went to several studios, and they wasn't interested in anything, you know, because, you know, they were busy and they didn't care about making it. So finally went to this one studio, and I told that old boy in there, and he said, oh, there's a guy back there might be interested in that. He was talking about Speedy West.
Once Speedy West, a well-known producer, heard Loretta sing, he knew that fate had delivered something very special to his doorstep. Keeping her word to Norm Burley, she recorded Whispering Sea. But for the flip side, she chose another song that she had written, I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl.
Ever since you left me, I've done nothing but wrong. Many nights I've laid awake and cried. We once were happy, my heart was in a whirl, but now I'm a honky-tonk girl.
Norm Burley was so happy with Loretta's success that he offered to pay for a promotional trip across the country. Loretta and Dew left their children with relatives and set out to promote her new record to DJs all over the United States. As they entered each new town, they'd flip the radio dial until they found the local country station. Next, they'd spot the tower and follow it to the source. Loretta would slip her way past the receptionist and head right for the DJ.
Yeah, I met Loretta. She came to town. I was a disc jockey in a little town named Coolidge, Arizona. And she looked like she was about 12 years old. You just wanted to shut up and listen to her talk. She had that little Kentucky accent, and she wasn't bigger than a nickel.
I said, hello, my name is Loretta Lynn, and I've got a record here called Honky Tonk Girl. It's on the Zero label, and I brought you a picture, too. My husband took the picture, and I brought you a card. I've even wrote a card for you.
She was really shy. And it took her, it took her a little while. She said, that she'd cut this record, and she acted like she thought I was going to give it back to her and tell her to go on her way,
He looked at me like, well, here's a nut. But I didn't let that stop me. I couldn't let that stop me from peddling my record.
Loretta and Dew would drive all day. At night, they would sleep in a cheap hotel or in the car to save money. They stopped at every radio station in their path, no matter how small. Loretta was determined to get her song on the airwaves.
Time we got back home and the record was 14 on the charts. And Billboard, I didn't really know what that meant. And when I got home, the boys in the workforce there in that joint, they came running out and they said, "You know, you're 14 in Billboard, you're 14 in Billboard." And I said, "Well," I said, "that good? That mean it's good?"
Sadly, though, Loretta's father had not lived long enough to enjoy her good fortune. He had died the year before of a stroke. But the success of I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl inspired Loretta to pursue even bigger dreams. She decided to head for the home of country music itself, the Grand Ole Opry.
I'd tell all the disc jockeys I'm going to Nashville, I'm going to be on the Grand Ole Opry, and they laughed at me. And I wondered why they laughed.
Loretta, tell us a little something about yourself, if you will. Where were you performing before you came to the Opry?
I had a little band of my own up in the state of Washington, a little place called Blaine, Washington. And we played there 6 nights a week. And my brother played lead guitar. And about 6 months ago, we moved back here.
This was my first time on the Grand Ole Opry. I can't remember anything but patting my foot and then running off stage and hugging Doo, you know, and telling him I'd sung on the Grand Ole Opry. That's the biggest you can get.
Loretta was so popular that the Opry kept asking her back for a total of 18 consecutive weeks. The Grand Ole Opry Show introduced Loretta Lynn to millions of new fans. And now, with her first hit record, she had taken a giant step on the long road to national fame. By 1960, Loretta Lynn's career was taking off. She had a hit record, I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl. She had performed on the Grand Ole Opry. Yet even with her success, Loretta was still without a record deal. Loretta's managers, Doyle and Teddy Wilburn, hoped to sign her with Decca Records. But Decca producer Owen Bradley was more impressed with Loretta's songwriting than her singing.
The Wilburn brothers were kind of pressuring me to take an act, and they played me this song, and I needed a song for Brenda Lee. I said, why don't you give me that song?
And Owen said, I'll take that one song called Fool Number One. And Doyle said, I'm not here to push a song, I'm here to push an artist. Owen says, well, I'll tell you what, Doyle, we'll make a trade here. Give me Fool Number One for Brenda Lee, and I'll record Loretta. And he said that was the best trade he ever made.
Loretta's popularity grew so quickly that in 1961, she was named the most promising female artist by the Country Western Disc Jockey Poll. Loretta wrote songs about what she knew best, her hard life growing up in Kentucky, her family, and most of all, her troubled marriage to the hard-drinking, womanizing Doolittle Lynn.
He did all them things. You ain't woman enough to take my man. Squalls on the warpath. Don't come home a-drinkin'. You know, she wrote all them songs about him.
Don't come home drinking. Lovin' on your mind. I thought that was great. Every man in the world has come home in some kind of shape, you know, and thinking, you know, here I am, the lover of the world, you know. You've been waiting all this time for me. I know I've done that. Men are a mess, and she told us about it.
She was the first one that came out with the songs that, you know, pretty much told a man which way to stand.
Loretta wrote songs for women everywhere. She challenged convention and confronted social taboos in a string of #1 hits like Rated X.
They thought since it was going to be rated X, it had to be real bad. And it was taken up for the girl if she'd been married. You know, it started out, well, if you've been a married woman, things didn't seem to work out. Divorce is the key to being loose and free, so you're going to be talked about. So it was taken up for the divorced lady. Not one thing in there was bad. But they got a lot of belly aching about it, but it was still a hit for me.
As Loretta's fame grew, so did the controversy over her songs. Some were condemned by religious groups, others were banned by radio stations. But none caused a bigger uproar than her song about birth control, The Pill.
Several years I stayed at home while you had all your fun. Every year that's gone by, another baby's come. There's gonna be some changes made right here on Nursery Hill. You set this chicken your last time, 'cause now I've got the pill.
People were complaining about how in the world can you sing a song like that on the air. You know, you just can't have, you can't talk about things like that. When they told her, you know, that she shouldn't be talking about the pill, I mean, she'd get on Carson or whatever, and she'd say, well, why? I take it, don't you?
The preacher would preach about it on Sunday, and then the women would go out and buy it to see how bad it was. I never dreamed that women would take this the wrong way, and they didn't. They bought enough of them to make #1.
The song was blacklisted by radio stations from Boston to Tulsa. But that didn't stop The Pill from soaring straight to the top of the charts.
It resonated with all of us. And I'd be in my 57 Chevy going to the grocery store, and I'd be going, amen, sister, tell it, tell it, tell it.
Well, you know, I never even thought about the feminist deal and all this kind of stuff when I put out The Pill and put out One's on the Way, and the underground papers began coming out. They wanted to know if I was woman's lib. And I said, hey, you know, I believe in if a woman does a man's job, she ought to get paid the same price he does. But I ain't going down the street burning my bra, if that's what you're talking about. I need that thing.
Loretta had become an outspoken headliner who could write #1 songs with the best of them. In the male-dominated world of country music, she was busting down barriers.
She really changed what women could sing about and did it very straightforwardly with no apologies, and really kicked down a lot of doors for the rest of us.
Through it all, I think we come through, and I think we're making a big statement now. There's a lot of women out there that are selling out the concert halls, and a lot of women that are running record labels and television production. And I think it's about time. I'm glad to see it. Go, girls.
By the time she was 29, Loretta Lynn was one of the most popular country music performers in America. In 1964, she was voted favorite female artist by Billboard magazine. During the 60s and 70s, Music City News named her Female Artist of the Year an incredible 12 years in a row.
I don't think she ever thought she could make money doing it. I know I didn't. I just wanted to do it. It was just a love for music. When we started working and making some money, I mean, it was just what a thrill to be able to do what you've always dreamed of doing and make money doing that.
But as Loretta's career blossomed, she was spending less and less time at home with her children. It only became more difficult when in 1964, she gave birth to twin girls named Patsy and Peggy.
When we were growing up, we did not have her. Very few times I can actually remember her being home and it being, you know, feeling like you had a mother there.
Stayed home and really did a great job with the twins. And I used to get so sorry for Loretta because she would say, my oldest 4 kids know me and I'm mommy, but to the twins, she said, it's so hard because I haven't been around them while they were little, nearly as much as she was the other one. And they just considered mommy and daddy for a while, you know, and that really put Loretta on a guilt trip.
So it went against all of her raising to do what she did.
Loretta worked hard, barely ever taking a day off. She performed each evening, often doing 2 shows back to back. She would travel to a new city after the show each night, sleeping in the back of the bus.
You say our love is over.
The demanding schedule soon took its toll on Loretta's health.
I've been with her when she's been very sick, where she's had to be on stage, and she's actually, had to leave stage. And I remember I was just there, and she pushes me out, go sing a few songs. And this was way before I even started.
Loretta suffered from migraines and then had to fight off a dependence on pills that were prescribed for the pain. She was hospitalized over and over for exhaustion.
Try to get her to quit and not do so much on the road and stuff, and so we'd knock off for a month, and hell, she'd get itchy, you know. She'd want to go. She'd want to know how the boys are eating, how everybody's doing, and she wanted to get back on the road, and she did.
Loretta knew how much she owed to her career. She lived in a 14-room mansion in Tennessee. She had become the first female millionaire in country music. Yet she never forgot her childhood as a poor coal miner's daughter.
My early childhood memories probably are some of my best. They stuck with me more because they taught me more. And I think if they didn't, I would be who I was today. Because if you don't remember who you are and where you come from, you get lost in the shuffle as you grow older.
Loretta turned those childhood memories into the song that became her signature, Coal Miner's Daughter.
Well, I was born to coal miner's daughter in a cabin on a hill in Butcher Holler. We were poor, but we had love. That's the one thing that Daddy made sure of. He shoveled coal to make a poor man's dollar.
The album featuring Coal Miner's Daughter sold more than 1 million copies. Despite Loretta's struggle with exhaustion and illness, her success was at a peak. And in 1972, Loretta was selected to receive one of the most prestigious honors in country music.
The Country Music Entertainer of the Year is Loretta Lynn.
I'd like to say that I've won a lot of awards, and this is one that I have been nominated for, but I never did get. And this, I think, is the only one that I haven't gotten. The only thing, I'm real happy, but the only thing that I'm kind of sad about is my husband is gone hunting. He couldn't make it back in to share my happiness with me. Thank you.
America couldn't get enough of Loretta's rags to riches story. She even became the first country star to make the cover of Newsweek. New York Times columnist George Vesey became so fascinated with Loretta that he offered to help write her autobiography.
I really didn't want to write a book because I felt I was too young to write about my life. I hadn't lived. When I was 15, I was 35. When I was 35, I was 15. But George Vesey was a good writer, and he talked me into doing it.
There really are no secrets with Loretta, that what people saw, what they thought they saw on stage, or the interview that she'd give in some small town, or the way she'd be on television, was exactly the way she was. But in fact, her life was an open book before we did the book.
The book, appropriately titled Coal Miner's Daughter, was a huge success, spending 20 weeks on the bestseller list. Loretta hoped the book would finally quell the public's curiosity about her private life. But interest in her story only exploded, and Hollywood came knocking on her door. By the late 1970s, Loretta Lynn, the coal miner's daughter from Kentucky, was already a country music legend. So it was no wonder that her best-selling autobiography caught the interest of Hollywood. Loretta signed a contract with Universal Pictures and handpicked Sissy Spacek to play her.
I was handed a big stack of pictures, probably a foot deep. I got about halfway down that stack, and it was a blonde-headed girl, long blonde and freckle-faced, and it was a glamour picture. I just threw it out, and I said, this is the coal miner's daughter.
And she decided I was going to do it and nobody else, and she started saying on television, little Sissy Spacek, she's going to play me. And I just couldn't believe that this woman was going on national television telling the world that I was going to do her movie when I hadn't accepted it yet. So I was mortified and was determined not to do it. I saw her for the first time, and all of her band members and her managers and agents were all behind her like little ducks following her. She had on a flaming red dress, and I remember she was just mad as she could be, and she was going, bam, 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 bam. I couldn't hear nothing but them dead burned drums beating in my ear, and I thought, I've got to play her.
While Tommy Lee Jones prepared for the role of Loretta's husband Doolittle, Sissy took on the awesome task of filling Loretta's shoes. She watched Loretta at work to learn how to act and sing like her.
She was with me off and on for the whole year. It like to kill me because I was doing 2 shows a night. And then I'd work almost the rest of the night with Sissy. We knew each other inside and out. I knew as much about her as she did about me. And I felt that's the way it had to be.
Coal Miner's Daughter premiered in March 1980 to critical acclaim. And Sissy Spacek won an Oscar for Best Actress.
I can't breathe. I feel like I'm gonna faint.
Well, that's what you're supposed to feel when you love.
The book and the movie was a big career move for my sister, but you know, it was perfect because that is my sister, and I think it put her in a place where they really saw my sister. You know, she's the coal miner's daughter.
Loretta attended the movie's premiere with her mother, Clara. It was one of the last happy times they would spend together in public. On Thanksgiving Day in 1982, Clara passed away.
I went to Kentucky when her mom died, and that was a very terrible experience. And Loretta sang all night. We stayed there all night, and the one thing that she would sing all night long was, "If I Could Hear My Mother Pray Again." Beautiful, beautiful song. And that seemed to help her get over the grief. She would just sing and think of her mom, and she'd laugh and tell stories about her mom.
For Loretta, it seemed there was sadness around every corner. In July 1984, she had a seizure while touring and had to be hospitalized. She had no idea that at the exact same time, she was losing her eldest son. 34-year-old Jack Benny Lynn, an experienced rider, drowned while crossing a river on horseback.
When you lose a child, that's something you don't ever think of ever doing. And it leaves a hole in your heart that never is refilled. It's still there. And at night, I just ask God to hold him for me till I get there.
In times of crisis, Loretta would always rely on her husband, Dew, for support. To outsiders, their marriage was a puzzle. How could someone whose songs were all about strong, independent women stay with a man who drank heavily and had affairs?
If something happened, I would write a song and I could say it to him in the song, where I couldn't just stand up and say it to him, you know, without a fight. And it always helped me. I felt that it did.
Daddy worshipped her.
Beyond anything.
He worshipped her. And she did Daddy. I don't care what people think or what they say. Their love was special.
As Dew got older, he seemed to mellow, but the drinking never got better.
I felt sometimes it was better to be on the bus than it was to be home because he was drinking so much, you know. Dew wouldn't go after a while because he did not want the public to see him drink. And I understood because he had this problem, and it's a disease.
By the early 1990s, Dew was seriously ill with heart failure and diabetes. Both of his legs had to be amputated. Loretta largely put her career on hold to take care of him.
And it was, in a sense, killing Mom. I mean, it was literally killing her. Watching it and sitting with him, and it was the most awful 4 years
and she was
that anybody could ever go through.
In August 1996, the end came. Loretta Lynn, who married Loretta when she was just 13, who bought her that first guitar and believed she could be a great singer, died at the age of 69.
They loved each other dearly. And, you know, think about it. They stayed together 48 years. And then they would be together today if he was alive.
I loved Dew. All of his life I've loved him. And I miss him today. I love him still today, to this day. No matter how hard we got along and no matter what kind of a life we had, he was still the man in my life.
Crushed by Dew's death, Loretta withdrew from public. For months, she didn't tour or record.
My mother grieved. You go through these stages. There's the angry stage. You know, why I'm alone, you know, why did he leave me alone? If he wouldn't have drank all those years, he wouldn't have done, you know.
For a long time, she was real depressed. You know, like we didn't work for a while. We just stayed on the ranch and stuff, and then she just said, hell with it, we're going to work, and we just left.
Just as she had so many times during her life, Loretta Lynn had found the strength to bounce back. And now, as she was entering her 5th decade as a singer, she was about to show her fans a whole new side of her life and her music.
That ain't all, I lost my mind in Oregon.
Loretta Lynn is one of the most celebrated artists in country music history. With more than 50 top 10 hits, she's received more Country Music Association nominations than anyone. For all that, she was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1988.
I would have dressed up if I'd have known this. Minnie told me that I might get this, and I said, no way, Jose. And she bet me $5, and now I've lost $5.
And 15 years later, her remarkable career was celebrated at the prestigious Kennedy Center Honors before a crowd that included President and Mrs. Bush. But Loretta was never one to rest on her laurels. More than 40 years after she first sang I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl on the Grand Ole Opry, she was still playing to sold-out crowds across the country.
Ever since you left me, I've done nothing but wrong.
Every day, watching her perform and watching her connect with an audience is still the most amazing thing to me. I can never get enough of it.
Loretta! And neither could her fans. They not only continued to flock to her shows,
Thank you, honey. I hope you enjoy that. Thank you.
they made the 2nd volume of her autobiography, Still Woman Enough, a national bestseller.
I idolize her. I just think she's fabulous. She's such an honest person from the heart.
In 2004, Loretta gave her fans new reason to cheer, earning 5 Grammy nominations for her most critically acclaimed album in years, Van Leer Rose. In an unusual pairing, it was produced by a hot young rock musician, Jack White of the White Stripes.
Jack worked his little butt off on this record and let me sing it one time through. I said, don't we sing it no more than that? Nope. That was it. So I had my job over with one take.
I've been out here every day since you've been away from me.
Loretta wrote every song on the album, including Miss Being Mrs., a painful account of her life without her husband, Du.
Oh, I miss being Mrs. tonight.
To be with him, it was a problem now and then, but it's worse to be without him.
After Du's death, Loretta pulled her family in around her, off stage and on. On any given night, her son Ernest would be playing guitar and trading barbs with her on stage.
I'm liable to whip him before he gets home, too.
Any of you young girls want to whip me, you know, I'll be all right.
Get back on your ex. Lord. She wants to get her on her knees and pray for you. He needs it, honey.
That'll work.
And Loretta's twin daughters, Patsy and Peggy, also performed with her. As a duo called the Lynns, they enjoyed their own successful music career.
Are you taller than me? Mother, you're the shortest one in our family.
Well, thanks.
For Loretta, it was a chance to grow closer to the children she so often left behind when they were growing up and she was on the road. She was happy to have them near, but bittersweet about the direction their lives had taken.
I would have rather my kids would get into any kind of business except the music business, because it's not a very good life for a person that wants to be a homebody, you know. It wasn't for me. I love you more than my Irish.
As she neared her 70th birthday, Loretta was still keeping a very active tour schedule, but spending more time at home.
She does better. She enjoys it more. It's not a job now. You know, I've got to go to work. It's if I want to go.
But even at home, Loretta was always on stage. Her ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, had become one of the biggest tourist attractions in the state. 2 million fans came every year to tour her museum.
This was what I come into Nashville, had it on.
A model of her childhood house, even a replica of a coal mine.
I'm just lucky, you know. I'm a lucky girl, and I think God's had me by the hand.
To those who know her best, success never did change Loretta. She was and always will be the coal miner's daughter.
I watch her, she'll count change on the back of the bus going down the road, you know. We're broke. Okay, Mama. And I've just picked up $150,000, you know, and it's in the safe on the bus, but she's counting her change. That's the way she is, because they live poor, you know, in Kentucky.
If Loretta Lynn never cut another record, if she never played another concert, her legend would be secure. She was more than just one of the best-selling artists of all time. She was a country music original, a pioneer.
Loretta Lynn still has broad appeal across generations of music fans, as shown when Van Lear Rose earned 2 2004 Grammys, including Best Country Album. Jack White was on hand to accept the awards with Lynn as her collaborator and the album's producer. And in April 2005, Lynn was honored again, this time by Country Music Television with the Johnny Cash Visionary Award. Though Cash had died more than a year earlier, it was a resonant echo to the time Cash's speech welcomed Lynn to join him in the Country Music Hall of Fame and further solidified her standing in the pantheon of country music legends.